The sun had just begun its slow descent beyond the bamboo-covered hills of Saketa when Anoma, a young monk barely past 20, knelt in the monastery's ancient library. Dust swirled in golden rays slicing through latticed windows as he gently opened a forgotten scroll, tucked behind centuries-old commentaries. The title was curious. Nanama, Buddha, the one without a name. His heart skipped. That wasn't a name he had seen before. Most scriptures began with praises of the Blessed One, the Bhagava, the Tathagata, Gautama Buddha. But this? The one without a name? He unfurled the scroll. The ink was faded, but the words burned bright in meaning. The one who is awake is called Buddha. But this is not a name as men are given names. It is a state as fire is called fire, not because of what it is called, but because of what it does. Anoma sat back, stunned. Was the Buddha not a person? Anoma had grown up in a village that adored statues of the Enlightened One. His mother chanted to Buddha each morning. In his young mind, Buddha was like a divine hero, someone distant, someone gone. A long-gone man who had once walked, taught, died. But these words whispered another possibility. He turned to his teacher the next morning. Akariya, Anoma asked gently, is Buddha the name of one person only? Venerable Kakana smiled, eyes closed in the warm light. You found the scroll, didn't you? Yes, Banti, Anoma said, his voice unsure. It says, Buddha is not a name, but a state. Kakana opened his eyes. A precious insight. Tell me, Anoma, what does it mean to be called Buddha? To be awake? Anoma answered hesitantly. Good. And what is it one awakens from? The sleep of ignorance, of not knowing reality as it is. The elder nodded. And can only Gautama awaken from such sleep? Anoma fell silent. For the first time in his life, the question echoed louder than any answer. He had always thought only Gautama Siddhartha, the son of King Suddhodana, had reached such heights. But if Buddha was a state, and not a name, then perhaps. Over the next few weeks, Anoma dove into the old Nikayas with new eyes. Everywhere, signs had been hiding in plain sight. In the Agutara Nikaya, the Buddha himself had said, I am not the first Buddha, nor shall I be the last. And in the Dhyana he had listed 6 Buddhas before him, Vipassi, Sikhi, Vesabhu, Kakasanda, Kagamana, and Kassapa, all who had walked the earth, attained full awakening, and taught the Dhamma in ages long past. Their stories were not myths. They were echoes, prototypes, reminders that the state of awakening could recur under the right conditions. Anoma realized something profound. Buddha was a possibility, not a person. The temple bell echoed softly across the monastery grounds as Anoma carried his satchel of notes to the Bodhi courtyard. The fig tree, descended from the very same species under which Siddhartha had awakened, rustled gently in the morning breeze. The young monk sat beneath it, his mind swirling like the leaves above. He took out a palm leaf manuscript. Upon it, he had copied a single line from the Majjhima Nikaya. Yo Dhamma Passati, so ma passati. Whoever sees the Dhamma, sees me. This phrase had always puzzled him. It wasn't whoever sees me, sees the Dhamma. It was the reverse. Did that mean seeing the Dhamma, the truth, was equivalent to seeing the Buddha? Even when the Buddha was no longer in the world. He had once asked an older monk, what did the Buddha look like? The answer was always, golden, radiant, serene. But now Anoma suspected that this was more poetry than reality. If seeing the truth was seeing the Buddha, then the Buddha was not an object of vision at all. Not a face, not a man, but a state of clarity. He remembered a passage from the Dhammapada. Buddha ti nama so bhikhe varahati. It is because he has awakened that he is called Buddha. In other words, one was not born a Buddha, one became Buddha. Later that day, Anoma joined his teacher again. Banti, he asked, if the Buddha is a state, then what is the difference between a Buddha and an arahant? Kakana placed his alms bowl down and smiled. That question is older than any of us. He pointed to a mango tree behind them. See that fruit? Anoma nodded. When the mango is ripe and sweet, what do you call it? A mango, Anoma said, confused. And when the tree first bore that fruit, what did we call it? Still a mango, Banti. The old monk chuckled. Exactly. The Dhamma ripens in different ways. The arahant has seen the end of suffering through guidance. The Buddha finds the way without being shown. But both are free from the chains of Sasra. Anoma's eyes widened. So even the arahant has reached the same end? The same release, Kakana nodded. But the Buddha blazes the trail. Others walk it after. So a Buddha, Anoma said slowly, is someone who reaches awakening alone. But what matters is the awakening, not the name. Precisely. The teacher affirmed. Just as the sun is not called sun because of its shape, but because it shines. That night, Anoma sat alone with the idea. It was uncomfortable at first. For so long. He had seen the Buddha as someone superhuman, a relic of history, a perfection beyond reach. But now it seemed the door was never meant to be shut. The title Buddha was not a monument, but a mirror, pointing inward. He scribbled in his notebook. Buddha is not his name. It is the name of his clarity. Therefore, to seek Buddha is to seek clarity, not a statue, not a story, but the ending of ignorance. It was as if a fog had begun to lift. 2 days later, Anoma found himself staring into the clear waters of the monastery's lotus pond. A breeze gently rippled the surface, distorting his reflection, eyes, nose, lips, into shifting waves of form. He didn't flinch. Instead, he whispered aloud, Buddha ti nama so, not because of his face, but because of his vision. He had come to realize something disturbing yet liberating. He had never truly seen the Buddha. What he had seen and clung to was an image carved in wood, painted in gold, enshrined in temples. But now, he suspected, that wasn't the real Buddha. He took out another verse from his satchel. Copied from the Itivataka. The Tathagata is one who has become such, not because of lineage, not because of tradition, but because the taints are ended, the mind is released. The phrase Tathagata literally, one who has thus gone, or thus come, fascinated Anoma. The Buddha used it to refer to himself, but never with pride. It was descriptive, not personal. A label for someone who had passed beyond labels. The scroll he found called this the mirror with no face, a being no longer caught in the self-image, yet fully aware. Back in the Dhamma hall, Anoma approached a younger Smara, a novice monk named Sati. Have you ever wondered, Anoma asked gently, why the Buddha never spoke of himself in the usual way? Sati blinked. He said Tathagata a lot. Yes, Anoma replied. But never, I, said Hatha. Never my soul or my fate. Even when dying, he said. Vyadhamasakar, all formations are subject to decay. Sati nodded slowly. He didn't cling to himself as a person. Exactly, said Anoma. That's the hidden teaching. The Buddha didn't just teach anatta, no self, he lived it. Even the title Buddha was used like a finger pointing to a condition, not to a me. So the word Buddha, Sati said, hesitantly, is more like a description of the mind? Anoma's heart lifted. Yes, a mind that has awakened from illusion, the end of confusion, craving fear. That is what Buddha names not the person, but the process completed. That night, Anoma sat in the meditation hall long after the others had gone. He entered stillness, watching the breath, the body, the passing thoughts. For a moment, he sensed something unfamiliar. A moment of clarity not belonging to anyone. No, Anoma was there. No role. Just awareness, silent and vast. Not special, but deeply simple. Not divine, but undeniably awake. He didn't call it Buddha, but when the moment passed, the word made more sense than ever before. It was Upasatha night, the full moon casting silver light across the stone courtyard. Monks gathered for chanting, reciting ancient verses that had echoed across centuries. Yet Anoma, though present, felt a quiet tug within. As voices chanted praises to the Buddha, his mind returned to the question that now lived in his bones. What are we praising, a man or a state of mind? The verses said, Iti pi so bhagava araha, samasam buddho. Indeed, he is the blessed one, the worthy one, the fully self-awakened one. Anoma had repeated those words for years. But tonight, they felt different. Not empty. No, never that. But different. As the chanting faded, he turned to Venerable Kakana under the moonlight. Bandi, do you ever feel we are praising something we've never truly understood? The old monk did not answer immediately. He seemed to breathe in the night air as if it were filled with meaning. Then he said, we praise not to glorify, but to remember, not to worship a person, but to keep alive the possibility. Anoma blinked. Possibility. Kakana nodded. The Buddha never asked us to worship him. He said, be a lamp unto yourselves. Why? Because if we fixate on him as a god, we miss the real miracle, that the same clarity can arise in us. Anoma's heart stirred. Over the following weeks, this idea reshaped his entire understanding of practice. Every time he bowed before the Buddha image, he asked himself, "Am I bowing to a man or to the principle of awakening?" Every time he meditated, he stopped searching for mystical lights, divine voices, or transcendental bliss. He watched, instead, for clarity, for the vanishing of confusion, for the soft end of attachment in a moment. One evening, he shared a realization during a Dhamma discussion. The Buddha is not someone we are meant to admire from afar. He is the evidence of what is possible in the human condition. Buddha is not a ceiling above us. It is the floor we can rise to stand on. The room was silent for a long time. One of the elder monks, usually silent, finally whispered, "I had forgotten that." Later that night, Anoma penned these lines in his notebook. "Worship freezes the truth. Reverence can awaken it. If we remember what we're revering, not the man, but the mind made free." In the monastery's courtyard, a single Bodhi leaf detached and floated down. Anoma smiled. It landed without clinging. News came that a village in the eastern valley was holding a great Buddha Puja festival, and the abbot invited a group of young monks to attend and teach. Anoma was among them. He had not been outside the monastery in months. As their small group descended from the forested hills into the flat rice fields of the village, they saw the signs of celebration: gold streamers, lotus lanterns, offerings of mangoes and milk rice arranged neatly before large statues of the Buddha, serene, cross-legged, with a faint smile. Villagers bowed before the images with devotion that was both beautiful and, to Anoma, somehow bittersweet. That evening, Anoma was invited to give a talk. A crowd of lay people, children included, gathered in the candle-lit pavilion. He stood humbly before them. "Dear friends," he began, "today you have shown great reverence to the Buddha, and that is a beautiful thing." Murmurs of agreement, heads nodding. "But," he said gently, "if I may ask, what do you believe the Buddha is?" An older woman raised her hand. "He is the greatest being to ever live. We worship him because he is beyond us, divine." Another added, "He is our protector. We chant so he will hear us and bless us." Anoma paused, then said softly, "Let me share with you a story from the Buddha's own words." He told them the parable of the mustard seed from the Therigatha of Kisa Gotami, the mother who begged the Buddha to bring back her dead son. The Buddha had told her, "Bring me a mustard seed from a home untouched by death." She returned with none. No house had escaped sorrow. And in that realization, she awakened, not because the Buddha had granted her wisdom, but because he had pointed her toward truth. Anoma looked at the crowd. Did he bless her like a god? The villagers shook their heads slowly. "No," said Anoma. "He showed her what was real. And that knowing, that clarity, was what freed her from suffering. That is what it means to be Buddha, to awaken to things as they truly are." He took a small Bodhi leaf from his robe and held it high. "This leaf," he said, "does not become a tree overnight. But within it is the code, the pattern, the potential. You too," he said, looking into their eyes, "carry the seed of awakening. You do not bow just to a statue, but to what is possible within yourselves." The Buddha showed the way, not as a god to worship, but as a mirror of your own nature. The silence was deep and still. Then a child spoke up, a girl no older than 10. "Then if I practice what he practiced, I can be like him?" Anoma smiled, heart full. "Yes, you may not call yourself Buddha, but when confusion falls away and compassion rises and the heart no longer clings, then you are living the same truth he lived." After the talk, the old woman who had first spoken came to Anoma. "I've worshipped him all my life," she said, tears in her eyes. "But I never knew he wanted us to walk, not kneel." Anoma touched her palm gently. "Sometimes, kneeling is the beginning of standing." Weeks passed. The rainy season began, and the monks took shelter in a remote forest vihara surrounded by dense sal trees and winding deer paths. It was during one of his daily alms rounds that Anoma met him, the old man by the river. He wore no robe, carried no bowl. His only possession seemed to be a bamboo staff and a weathered smile. He greeted Anoma with the respect due to a monk, but when Anoma offered blessings in return, the old man laughed softly. "I don't need blessings, young one," he said. "What I needed, I found many years ago." "You live alone?" Anoma asked. "I live where delusion ends," the man replied with a glint in his eye, "which is sometimes in the forest and sometimes in silence." Anoma sensed something unusual, a gravity, a peace, the kind of stillness he had only ever read about in the texts. Over the next few days, Anoma visited him again and again. They would sit on the mossy bank of the river as the clouds drifted above. Anoma spoke of practice, discipline, the suttas, while the old man listened patiently, nodding, offering very little. Until one afternoon, Anoma finally asked, "Forgive me, sir, but you speak like a master. Were you once a monk?" The old man looked away and said nothing for a long while. Then he said, "I once wore robes. I once studied names, titles, scriptures. I once believed that the path required identity." Anoma tilted his head. "And now, I have no name," said the man. "And so, I cannot cling to being a teacher, or a student, or even a Buddhist. I do not need to be called anything. What matters is what I am not." "Not?" Anoma asked. The man turned to face him fully. "Not confused, not bound, not becoming anything. And that, my young friend, is peace." Anoma was stunned. This man had no temple, no followers, no chants, no lineage. Yet his words struck more deeply than many sermons. "Do you consider yourself a Buddha?" Anoma asked, cautiously. The old man laughed, not mockingly, but freely. "Do the stars call themselves stars? Does the fire announce its fireness? The moment you say, 'I am a Buddha,' you become someone again. And the Buddha is not a someone." Anoma whispered. "Then what is the Buddha?" The man's eyes shone like still water. "The end of becoming. The end of needing to be called anything. The mind that does not wobble. Whether praised or blamed. Named or nameless. That is the one you call Buddha. And he has no face, no form, no history." Anoma sat silently for a long time. And he understood. All along. He had been tracing footprints back to a figure, but now he realized the footprints vanish at the moment of awakening. The Buddha was not someone who possessed clarity. He was what remained when there was nothing left to possess. Not a name, not a god, not a memory, but a silence so deep it could no longer be disturbed. When Anoma returned to the monastery after his time in the forest, something about him had changed. The others noticed it, though no one said so directly. He moved with a quieter presence, as if no longer needing to explain himself. He still bowed to the Buddha image, still chanted the morning gatha, still swept the halls with care, but there was a difference. He was no longer searching. Not for approval, not for status, not even for answers. He had stopped asking, "Who is the Buddha?" Now he asked only, "What is awakening?" One afternoon, Anoma was invited to give a Dhamma reflection to the younger Smaras. He stood before the familiar golden statue, serene, cross-legged, radiant, and spoke softly. "I want to speak today about the most dangerous misunderstanding in Buddhism," he began. "The idea that Buddha is a historical figure who once walked the earth and now belongs to the past." There was a ripple of discomfort in the audience. "I don't mean the Buddha didn't exist," he clarified. "Of course he did. He was born, he practiced, he saw through illusion. But if we reduce him to a personality, a name, a story, a set of miracles, we turn the path into a museum." Several novices exchanged glances. Anoma continued. "The Buddha didn't want statues built in his image. He didn't ask us to chant to him. He said, 'He who sees the Dhamma sees me.' He meant, see the truth, and you will understand who I was." A hand rose. It was Venerable Siddha, one of the elder monks, a respected scholar. "But Bhikkhu Anoma," he said, measuredly, "without the Buddha's story, without his example, his birth, his victory, how do we inspire people? If we say Buddha is just a state, we risk losing the heart of devotion." Anoma bowed. Respectfully. "Bhante, I would say we risk something greater by not saying it. We risk turning the living path into a relic, something to admire, but not to enter." That night, the abbot called for a private meeting with Anoma. "You've stirred quite a conversation," he said, not unkindly. "Some say you're redefining the Dhamma. Others say you're dishonoring tradition." Anoma sat quietly. The abbot went on, "But I've watched you. I see how you walk, how you sit, how you treat the novices. There is no arrogance in you. Only something rare, equanimity." He looked Anoma in the eyes. "So tell me, truly, what do you believe the Buddha is?" Anoma took a deep breath. "I believe the Buddha is what remains, when all illusions fall away. When there is no I left to suffer, and no craving left to chase. The one who arrives at that stillness. Without identity. Without becoming. is called Buddha only for convenience. But he is not a name. He is the absence of name. The abbot closed his eyes and smiled. Then teach them that, he said. But do it gently. Most still need the raft before they can see the shore. It was a still morning. Mist drifted through the monastery gardens like memory. Anoma walked alone to the old Bodhi tree. The one planted generations ago from a sapling said to descend from the very tree under which Siddhartha had awakened. He knelt there often, not to worship, but to remember. Not a face, not a title, but a silence. He sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and let the breath come and go, like wind through empty space. There were no words in his mind, no metaphors, no doctrine. Only this direct presence, raw and spacious. Then, somewhere between exhalation and inhalation, it came. A vision, not like a dream, but a clarity. No shining deity. No majestic figure on a lotus. Just a voice, clear and silent, echoing in the ground of the heart. The raft is not the shore. The finger is not the moon. The name is not the knowing. And then it faded, and Anoma understood. The Buddha had never left. Not because he had become a god, but because what he had realized was never born and could never die. Later that day, he gathered the novices and younger monks beneath the Bodhi tree. With a single parchment scroll in hand, he spoke for the last time as their teacher. I have no final sermon, he said. No divine truth. No miracle. He unrolled the parchment. On it, a single verse he had written after meeting the forest hermit. Buddha is the silence that remains, when the self dissolves. Not a person, not a past, but the end of seeking. He looked at each of them, one by one. You will hear many names. You will chant many verses. But remember, the truth is not in the sound, it is in the seeing. Seeing clearly, directly, what binds the heart, and seeing it fall away. He bowed not to an altar, but to them, each of them. Still fumbling and flawed, yet carrying the seed of awakening within. Practice not to become like the Buddha, he said. Practice to stop becoming anything at all. That evening, Anoma left the monastery, robes folded, staff in hand. He left no forwarding trail. No shrine would mark his passing. No relics would be kept. No disciples would canonize his teachings. But those who had known him, even briefly, would sometimes sit in meditation and feel something rare. The presence of clarity with no owner, a knowing with no knower, a light, free of source. And in the years to come, when a novice would ask, who was he, really? The elder monks would answer, smiling faintly. He was no one. That is why we still remember him. Epilogue. A whisper on the wind. Decades later, a wanderer came upon a weathered stone beneath the old Bodhi tree. Etched into it were only 5 words. Buddha is not a name. He knelt, touched the stone, and felt, not devotion, not awe, but something deeper. Possibility. And so the path continued.